We begin this morning with that breaking news out of Ukraine, reports of a deadly attack at a train station in eastern Ukraine.
Authorities say at least 39 people were killed in what they say was a Russian rocket attack on a train station in Kramatorsk this morning. More than 100 more were reportedly injured. The Russian Defense Ministry issued a statement a short time ago denying their forces were behind the attack. This comes as Russian forces begin to intensify attacks in the eastern part of the country. And the military offensive is only expected to escalate after Russian troops pulled out of Kyiv and surrounding towns. Ukrainians there are sifting through the rubble, including in places like Borodyanka, where there are fears the number of civilian casualties could be higher than they were in Bucha. Yesterday, Russia was suspended from the United Nations Human Rights Council after 93 countries voted in favor of the U.S.-led motion. And in a rare admission, President Putin's spokesman told our colleagues at Sky News that Russia has been suffering notable casualties.
Yes, we have significant losses of troops, and it's a huge tragedy for us. Our military are doing their best to bring an end to that operation, and we do hope that in coming days, in foreseeable future, this operation will reach its goals or will finish it by the negotiations between Russian and Ukrainian delegation.
Let's get more on all this with John Herbst. He's the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and the senior director of the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Ambassador, good to have you with us. Let's first talk about this reported rocket strike. We know the Russians were regrouping, preparing to escalate their attack in eastern Ukraine. Your thoughts on what we're hearing this morning, and do you think that's what we're seeing now, this intensifying in the eastern part of the country?
Look, I've been to Kramatorsk several times. It was once the furthest extent of the Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine back in 2014 and 2015. The Ukrainians took it back around that time. And this attack is just one more sign of Moscow's tactics as they turn their attention exclusively or almost exclusively to Ukraine's east. They go after civilian targets because they're trying to, quote unquote, break the will of the Ukrainian people.
And
another war crime.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I know that at yesterday's NATO meeting, Ukraine's message was, quote, weapons, weapons, weapons. And it looks like members have agreed to supply more arms. But some critics believe sending more weapons will end up prolonging the war, leading to more death and destruction, and that instead the West should focus on diplomatic efforts to bring this conflict to a halt or ultimately an end. What do you think about that? Are more weapons the answer?
Weapons, in fact, are the answers. Russia is conducting a war of aggression. They've murdered thousands of Ukrainian civilians deliberately. They've been kicked out of Kyiv because Ukraine had some weapons, but they need more. The decision by the Brits to send anti-ship missiles to Ukraine may save Odessa. We need to get those high-altitude anti-aircraft weapons to Ukraine. This is the only thing that the Russians understand. If we don't send the weapons, we guarantee Russian domination of Ukraine. And we've seen just how dreadful that domination would be.
We just heard that soundbite from the Kremlin spokesman speaking yesterday, saying he hoped Russia's military operation will, quote, reach its goals in the foreseeable future, while also acknowledging, quote, significant troop losses. So what do you make of those comments? And do you think it's true that things could wind down in days, especially as things seem to intensify in the eastern part of the country?
It's very interesting that he said that. However, the president of Russia, Putin, the only man who makes decisions, has said nothing comparable. He's allowing negotiations where at very low levels. His military has said that they're going to focus their attention exclusively on the east, but Putin has not in any way backed away from his objective of, quote unquote, denazifying Ukraine, which actually means de-Ukrainianization of Ukraine. So when Putin says it, it's interesting. Until then, let's wait and see, and let's help Ukraine get the weapons to defend itself.
And Ambassador, we also saw Russia suspended from the UN Human Rights Council yesterday. This was after many calls for the country to be removed given its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Is this more of a symbolic move or significant in another way?
Look, it is symbolic, but it's also politically important. It demonstrates yet again how isolated Moscow is on the international scene because of this inhumane war of aggression. So it's a welcome step, but it's not decisive. Decisive is enabling Ukraine with its own soldiers to defeat Russia and on the battlefield. That is absolutely key.
Ambassador Don Hurst, thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez visited the northern Ukrainian town of Chernihiv, which has been hit hard by war. He spoke to a charity worker about the situation facing the city following those Russian troop withdrawals.
We're here in Chernihiv, just about 50 miles from the border with Belarus, and there is an urgent need right now with humanitarian aid workers trying to get food to the villages that were under Russian occupation for more than a month. I'm joined now by a woman who is a charity worker here who's been working so hard to get aid to these people and who is sheltering some of them in a basement for several weeks with no water, no food, no electricity. How desperate is the situation here?
To tell the truth, that in the city it is more quiet now. We could go out of the basement, and but anyway, we did this job non-stop, even when the bombing was on, and when we knew that such places can be betrayed, by the people who are in the town, and they could tell the points where the main help is being concentrated. Mm-hmm. So it was really dangerous. It is dangerous, but now the most need are the village people who are not far from around Chernihiv, and the village is completely destroyed, and they need food, elementary things. They need medical supplies, they need sanitary items.
Now, right outside, you are packing food into an ambulance to go out to these villages.
These are individual packets, for one packet for one person or for a family, or sacks of sugar, flour, anything. And they cook on fire in the yard.
This comes after weeks where the Russians were closing in on this city. It must have been terrifying to be in that basement.
A month and a half we do this.
How difficult was that?
It was difficult because if you heard, the bridges to the mainland were blown out. 3 bridges we had, and all of them were blown. We couldn't have supply. We were in circle, and this was the most difficult. So we used all the supplies which we had in the town or in the warehouses, etc.
And this morning we're hearing reports that there have been at least 30 people killed and more than 100 people injured in a rail station attack in eastern Ukraine. When you hear about that, what goes through your head?
We know now that the main attack will be on the eastern part, but we are afraid here because Chernihiv is on the way to Kiev from the north, because they can come from Belarus, which betrayed Ukraine as well.
Right. So you think that the Russians can come back at any time?
Anytime. Yesterday I got a message from my friend who lives in the border. He says they are moving. They have some already some technical devices maybe on the way.
Victoria, thank you so much for speaking with us again. A charity worker here trying to get food to some of the villages that were under Russian occupation for more than a month. Back to you.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much.
Now to history made in Washington. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, now the first African-American woman elevated to the Supreme Court. 3 Republican senators joined a united Democratic caucus to confirm her 53-47.
Judge Jackson took in that moment with President Biden at the White House yesterday. Take a look.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
All right. Okay. Wow. Congratulations. This is a big day.
NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor joins us now. Sahil, good morning. So this was a bruising confirmation process. Judge Jackson made it through, even winning some bipartisan support in the end. So what was it like on Capitol Hill during the vote and in those moments after?
Joe, there was joy, there was elation. The gallery was absolutely packed, more packed than I'd seen it in a long time in the Senate. And there was a line about a mile long of people trying to get in. There was a lot of anticipation toward this moment because the writing was on the wall from the beginning of this week when that 53-47 procedural vote landed to move the Jackson nomination forward. It was very clear at that point that that was going to be the final vote. All 50 Democrats plus 3 Republicans, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitt Romney, voting to make Judge Jackson Justice Jackson. It was a historic moment, of course, with the first black woman ever to be vice president of the United States presiding over the Senate and announcing the confirmation of the first black woman ever to be Supreme Court justice, which is likely to happen later this year now.
So, yes, Sahil, Judge Jackson's been confirmed. There's still another step to go. So for now, I guess you could say she's a justice in waiting. When will she be sworn in and officially succeed Justice Breyer?
That is likely to happen when the current term of the Supreme Court ends. It's usually at the end of June. Sometimes it kicks into early July, depending on the caseload. And the Supreme Court has quite an aggressive caseload of major hot-button cases, including abortion and affirmative action, on its docket this time. So we don't know exactly when it's going to end. But once it does, Justice Breyer is going to step down. Judge Jackson will be sworn in as Justice Jackson. And keep in mind, this will not disrupt the 6-3 conservative balance on the court. Conservatives are still in shape to launch to notch major victories. And for progressives, this is somewhat of a relief because Breyer is in his 80s. This confirmation is likely to keep the seat in liberal hands for decades to come and prevent another situation where conservatives could potentially flip this seat if they were to come in power. So it's a relief. It's a historic moment, a joyous moment. And for Republicans, they also knew the writing was on the wall, but they fought this quite aggressively. And toward the end, they made their closing arguments. It was nothing more dramatic than that. Some speeches on the floor from them.
Yeah, and in the end, it was only Senator Romney who stuck around to give applause afterward, the only Republican to do that. Today, Judge Jackson expected to appear with President Biden. What can we expect from that?
The White House has said that will be a celebration of the confirmation vote yesterday, a commemoration of Judge Jackson receiving her vote to land on the Supreme Court later on this year. We don't know entirely what to expect beyond the obvious. The White House is absolutely thrilled about this. This is a major political victory for President Biden right at a time when he needs it. His approval ratings have sunk to lows, including defections from his own base, at least disappointment, if not defections, I should say, from his own Democratic base. Many voters, black voters in particular, who turned out in huge numbers in 2020 and expected more from this White House. I think this, for many of them, this will be a reminder as to why they voted for President Biden and why they voted to put Democrats in power in the Senate. Because without that, Joe, it's very difficult to imagine Judge Jackson getting through a Republican-controlled Senate. They made that all but clear during the confirmation process.
All right. Sahil Kapoor, thank you so much.
Now, for more on politics, bad news for former President Donald Trump. New York Attorney General Letitia James is asking a judge to hold the former president in contempt. In court filings, James's office said Trump failed to comply with a judge's order to turn over subpoena documents and asked the judge to fine the former president $10,000 a day, yes, a day, until he turns the documents and records over. NBC News correspondent for investigations, Tom Winter, joins us now. Tom, this is all part of a civil investigation into the Trump Organization and allegations that it inflated financial statements. What do you know about that investigation, and what's the Trump Organization saying about all of this?
Right. So that investigation, the civil component is going on. I know in a couple of minutes we're going to talk about the criminal investigation, but the civil investigation continues. That's the reason why, if the judge finds, in fact, that the former president is in contempt, it's civil contempt. We're not talking about handcuffs here. We're talking about handcuffs on his wallet, as you laid out. So that's where this is going. The president will be providing a deposition in this civil investigation, which likely signals that it is coming to its conclusion. I think that's why you're seeing the press on for these documents. As far as the response from the Trump Organization, they're calling this motion and filing meritless. They say that it's frivolous. They say that they've provided these documents, and they've provided all that they have. So that's their response at this point, and we'll just have to wait and see what they actually file in court. And then ultimately, of course, it's up to a judge to decide if, in fact, he is in civil contempt.
And what you laid out sounds like a very long process. So what's the holdup? And do we know anything about the documents the AG's office wants to see?
Right. I do expect this to get to the judge and for the judge to make the decision fairly soon. As far as the type of documents, look, we know the former president by now. He's not somebody who's sending around 4 or 5 page inter-office memos, not somebody who's typing up long emails. The types of things that they're looking for are the ways that the president communicates personally. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Post-it notes or writings on top of documents that he likes to have printed out, inter-office notes and messages back and forth to members of the Trump organization. Those are the types of documents that they're seeking. This was ordered to be turned over. Trump's attorney says, look, we've looked for them. That they might exist at the Trump organization, the former president's business, but they do not exist in the president's possession. The attorney general's office saying not so fast. You really haven't outlaid how you've gone about searching for those documents. So, yes, we can expect more back and forth.
And, Tom, I want to ask you about the criminal investigation you alluded to. On Thursday, the Manhattan DA said his office's investigation into Trump and the Trump organization, quote, is continuing, and that they're exploring evidence not previously explored. I know many who follow these legal challenges say that statement seemed to come out of nowhere. So why the sudden announcement?
Right. It's a great question. So what was happening here is that the grand jury that was sitting and had come in last fall, their term was up. So when you're called to serve on a grand jury, it's for a specific amount of time. And so that their term is coming up here. And a lot of folks were speculating whether or not another grand jury would be impaneled to hear more evidence or hear more testimony in this ongoing investigation. And so I think the DA had to come out and say, look, we're not done yet. If you hear that there's not a follow-up a grand jury that's going to be listening to evidence specific to this investigation or specific to this case, it doesn't mean that we're wrapping up. So that's the reason why they provided that. I think another interesting thing you pointed out about the evidence that the new evidence that they're exploring that they say they haven't looked at yet. I think another thing that was important yesterday is the fact that they will tell us when and if this investigation concludes.
So much to follow. Tom Winter, thank you.
Sure thing.
Time to get a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Bill Cairns, good morning.
Happy Friday. So we had a lot of tornadoes. And when we talk tornadoes, a lot of times we talk about the enhanced Fujita scale, which describes how strong the winds are. But a lot of times when storm chasers are out there in the field looking at tornadoes, they describe them in different terms. Like the largest thick ones would be called wedge tornadoes. Some look like stovepipes. They're called stovepipe tornadoes. This one, I would call this one a drill bit tornado. You can see how intense it is, but how narrow it is. You know, the path of destruction is not wide at all, maybe only 10, 20 yards at most. And that's why they refer to this almost like a drill bit. If you took a drill and just kind of raked it across the soil there, and that's kind of how we want those tornadoes out in the farmers' fields, not destroying anything. That happened yesterday there in Leslie, Georgia. But just still amazing what Mother Nature can produce. So as we head towards the maps, the rain was pretty epic last night. It was epic at my house. We had 3.5 inches at my house, and there were many rivers in northern New Jersey where I live that hit major flood stage overnight, and there was a little bit of minor damage. We had up to 4 inches of rain in the Hudson Valley, and all of that is now pushing northwards into Maine. Boston, it looks like you are just about done. Cape Cod, give it another hour. Behind this, we're still going to have a little bit of rain to deal with. So this exits even Maine by this afternoon. But there's a lot of cold, chilly air. Like feels like March in Chicago and all through Wisconsin and Green Bay. And because of that, we call these instability showers. The sun heats up the ground. That warm air rises into the cold air aloft. And then we pop up all those little dots on this map are rain or either snow showers, depending on elevation. And that continues overnight, even into Saturday morning, some snow. Not a good morning to be hiking or camping anywhere on the Appalachian Trail, as it'll be cold, chilly with some snow expected. And even the Saturday, not the best starts of April weekend. So today, 40s, that's the best I could do for you in Minneapolis, Des Moines, even Kansas City. That's even chilly by Nashville and Memphis standards. And then on Saturday, that cool pool of air heads right over the Appalachians, heading into the Carolinas. So for today's forecast, enjoy a decent Friday after that soaking rain from D.C. to New York. If you're watching the Masters, you will see windy conditions today and kind of chilly, so the scores probably won't be as low. And how about the heat in the West? Still 95 degrees today, guys, in Los Angeles. It will cool off this weekend. Yesterday, they were mid to upper 90s. So record highs once again today. And we'll give you that complete weekend forecast coming up.
Wow. But it's a dry heat, I'm guessing, right? So there you go.
L.A. is the place to be, though.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.